We're getting there. We're going to just talk a moment about how we evaluate our projects so you can have credibility and confidence in the awards that are being delivered. I'm going to describe the process. Some of you have maybe seen this before. We have a multi-step process. The first step is we actually review the entries internally before they go to the judges, and we rank things on multiple factors. They summarize into this list here. We make sure that the user is clearly identified and his or her needs are identified, that the solution matches and solves user needs, that the product is usable and well-designed and intuitive, that the process is clearly articulated and explained, that there is research incorporated into the process, all different kinds of research, including user research and testing, that there is a good narrative that ties it all together as a great case study. And bonus points if you've got a truly impressive product with new or advanced technology or have great impact that can have an impact on social value. Now, if you have a sloppy submission or you don't talk about UX at all, obviously those are negatives. So we take that and then we score against all these factors. We actually score against 22 factors right now, but that's the summary. And we make an average score for each entry, which we then, we don't reveal our score to the judges. Instead, we give them a priority. So if you imagine each of this is a row that you can't see right now, each entry, the judges get a ranked priority of what things that we think that they should look at that meet a sort of baseline level of good. So getting back to the idea of good to great. And then the judges have to go off and score everything themselves on a 1 to 5 level. So these columns here represent individual judges, the A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And from there, we average out the judges' scores, and the judges also make some comments. We take those averages, and then we meet, and we give this ranked order that represents all the judges' thoughts. And during that meeting, we then talk about all the entries. And through that process, oftentimes judges' opinions might change, or there will be a certain consensus in a certain way. And we basically, after that, re-vote on which entries should win an award. That's what you can see here. So you can see there's yes, no's, and maybe. Once we get that list sorted down, then we vote again with a ranking to figure out, of the ones who won, which award should they get. And that's the final step during this process, which happens during that all-important judges meeting. And I'm wondering if any judges want to comment on their experience of the judging meeting. Anyone want to make any comments?
The good news is, other than Alan, no, we all got along. I think we came to a general consensus about everything. And honestly, because of your team and you, it did help weed out things for us to really focus on the strongest work. And I think we generally came to the same consensus about all the, I don't think this, maybe you in past years you've been duking it out between different, we didn't have that. I think we generally understood what the highlights were.
So I actually really enjoyed the moments of healthy debate, because I do think that there were, mostly prompted by Alan, but there were moments where we were really polarized, and I think it's that kind of discourse and rigor that we put around evaluating the entries, as well as just evaluating our work in general, that will raise all boats. We should continue to do that.
Great, thank you.
Can I just weigh in and say that yes, I was the contrarian, but I enjoyed the process and I learned quite a bit from my fellow judges, and you guys swayed my opinion. I know I'm loud and don't look that way, but I learned quite a bit from you, and thank you. I appreciated it.
Thank you. And now you'll be able to see just how convergent or divergent the judges were. So this crazy chart here represents all the judges and their various scores. If you imagine the x-axis is the entries, the x-axis is the entries, the y-axis is the scoring. And what you can see is there's no coherent, obvious pattern yet. To the left of the black line are the winners, and to the right are the non-winners. But if we smooth that, then you start to see a real pattern. So what you see here is that Itai was definitely the most charitable of the group. So you can thank him for your high scores. He's the blue line at the top. And actually, Kelly, you had the widest range, but you were the least charitable at the bottom there. And Alan was kind of steady state right there in the middle. So that's the green line. You can see there wasn't that much variation amongst the scores. The gray line is the average. And so both Thomas and Kelly had the widest range of scores, and everyone else, the rest, pretty much standardized around the average. So what this shows is that in this process in general, there is quite a lot of subjectivity. We can try and make it quantitative, and we have tried to do that with the awards with our retrospective analysis. Some of you were here in the morning when I went through some of that, and our ranking and trying to apply these numbers to different factors. But ultimately, it is very subjective, and small things can influence the process, and can influence, for that matter, UX and how people perceive the quality of our work. So, getting right into this, I also just wanted to have the judges talk about their criteria, starting with Grace. These are Grace's evaluative criteria. Do you want to add any comments?
I think I'll just build on what I said about going to market. I mean, just the rigor that it takes to really kind of think through some of these ideas, right? The level of craft and the level of detail and really the ability to measure actual impact are some of the kind of parts of the rubric that I use to evaluate the entries.
Great, thank you. Next, we've got Alan. These were Alan's criteria. Any additional comments?
Well, you can see my user focus and my goal-directed notions. You know, it's about synthesizing a fit for context in Christopher Alexander's terms.
Thank you. Next up is Kelly. Comments?
Yeah, this was kind of a clean +1, to get to 5 being the most exceptional. And it's tough because as Bev mentioned, it's extremely subjective. What is something that is truly effective or exceptional, right? But underpinnings of all of this is it meaningful work? Does it satisfy a solution effectively? And when it adds up, even just the UI being cumbersome or something just not making sense is really what would score lower. So it's hard to come up with this when you think about subjective intent. But ultimately, I think all the judges tonight, we came out with some good union feedback of all this stuff.
Thank you. Itai, this was what you had. I like the fifth one in particular, the first one.
Yes, I didn't use it a lot. I think I tried to focus on. I'll focus on number 5. I was really interested to see if we can take the industry or the world forward. Did people bring something new? Did they crack a problem in a different way? Did they have an insight that was meaningful? And I have to say that I did find a few of those. I was very happy about that.
Great, thank you. And Sky, any additions?
I did percentages here. And so the only thing that I comment on is process. I gave it 10% because if you're working in a new technology or an area that people just hasn't, defined before, process will change and your work and design process will also change. And the idea itself, I weighted that a little bit more heavily on if the entries had an end-to-end solution and they thought about that within their problem solving instead of just one portion of it.
Thank you. And I didn't have a slide for you, but would you like to add?
I'm sorry, that's my fault. But mine were basically number 1 and number 5 of eTies. There you go.
Awesome. So now the fun actually begins. Woo!